Which world leaders and officials have COVID-19? The COVID-19 coronavirus has spread rapidly over the last 8 months, impacting every inhabited continent and resulting in more than 22.8 million cases globally. This only gets more complicated in some countries as even their heads of state have been infected with the dreaded disease. In our video today, we go over which world leaders and officials have COVID-19. Welcome to Trending's Finest, where we give you the hottest updates on the world's most viral news, videos, and stories in the most exciting format. Click that subscribe button and hit the notification bell to not miss a single beat of the world's pulse. The coronavirus has already made its way into the corridors of power, and scores of national and local politicians around the world have announced that they've contracted the bug. Today, we go over some of the senior officials, politicians, and world leaders who have contracted the virus, including the possible first death of a world leader to be attributed to COVID-19. Stay tuned. Prince Charles. God saved the prince. 71-year-old Prince Charles was diagnosed with COVID-19 on March 25th, near the start of the outbreak, after suffering mild symptoms, most notably the loss of smell, which is thought to be a key symptom. He later said he had got away with it quite lightly, with 7 days self-isolating in Scotland after testing positive and displaying mild symptoms. His wife Camilla, the Duchess of Cornwall, has also been tested but does not have the virus. With lockdown restrictions being eased, the royal family has chosen to take a step towards a return to normality with a series of face-to-face public engagements. Prince Charles and his wife recently met frontline staff and key workers from several National Health Service trusts, including consultants, nurses, and cleaners at the Gloucestershire Royal Hospital near the Prince's Highgrove estate. Iranian Deputy Health Minister Iraj Harirchi. Iran's Deputy Health Minister Iraj Harirchi was one of the first figures of the world stage to have contracted a confirmed case of the virus. Defending a case rate of 95 in February, despite claims that number was in fact much higher, Minister Harirchi could be seen sweating profusely in a press conference the day before his positive test. He was noted to have fully recovered from the virus, which in early March had infected around 8% of the nation's parliament a fortnight later, including our next name on the list, U.S. Senator Rand Paul. The Republican lawmaker was the first senator to have a confirmed case of the virus, which also led Senators Ted Cruz, Rick Scott, and Lindsey Graham to quarantine after coming into contact with those who'd been infected. The Kentucky Republican said on March 22nd that he had tested positive and was in quarantine. He said he was asymptomatic and feeling fine and was tested out of an abundance of caution. He had been in the Senate and using the gym in the days before he received his positive result. Other members of the House of Representatives also contracted the virus, namely Representative Mario Diaz-Balart and Representative Ben McAdams. And more than 24 others have said they are self-quarantining in hopes of limiting the spread of the pandemic. Iranian Senior Vice President Ishaq Jahangiri. Fars news agency published the news in a picture list of names in Farsi with Jahangiri's name at the top, saying he was in quarantine and improving without elaborating. There was no immediate report on state media about the Iranian officials being ill, and no other media outlet in Iran immediately carried the report. Curiouser and curiouser. Michel Barnier. The EU's chief Brexit negotiator, Michel Barnier, tested positive on March 19th when talks between Brussels and London had already been postponed due to the virus. He returned to his post just under a month later. It looks like Michel's not eager to exit anytime soon. Peter Dutton. The Australian Home Affairs Minister tested positive for the virus after returning from the United States, where he'd been pictured with several high-profile figures, including Ivanka Trump. Scary, right? At the time, he was among the nation's 156 confirmed cases. After weeks of isolation with fluctuating symptoms, the minister had finally been given the all-clear on April 8th. Stay glued to your screen, folks, as we still have the biggest names on our list to come, including 3 members of UK Parliament, 2 First Ladies, 2 heads of state, and another member of royalty. Oh, and don't forget, the first possible death of a world leader to be attributed to COVID-19. UK members of Parliament, Gerald K. Osborne, Tony Lloyd, and Lloyd Russell Moyle. Perhaps the worst case among the three, Tony Lloyd, the Labour MP for Rockdale in Greater Manchester, spent 25 days in Manchester Royal Infirmary with COVID-19, including 10 days in an induced coma on a ventilator. He was discharged on April 27th and is now recovering with family in Manchester. Lloyd Russell Moyle, MP for Brighton Kemptown. He said he waited 6 days for the results of his test after he felt symptoms on March 11th and immediately self-isolated. He said he called 111 and was tested during a home visit the next day, the final day of community testing. Mr. Russell Moyle, who's HIV positive, said his doctor has advised him to have more tests on his kidneys. Labour MP for Jarrow, Kate Osborne, said she was diagnosed following a period of self-isolation. Ms. Osborne said on Twitter, "I will continue to self-isolate until I've fought off the illness." She urged people to heed NHS advice and stay at home if they have symptoms. She highlighted the official advice to stay at home for 7 days if people have either a high temperature or a new continuous cough. Brazil President Jair Bolsonaro and First Lady Michelle Bolsonaro. Having played down the severity of the virus for several months, the Brazilian president was confirmed to have contracted the virus on July 7th. President Bolsonaro had previously described COVID-19 as a little flu and had been a vocal supporter of hydroxychloroquine, the anti-malaria drug touted by U.S. President Donald Trump that's yet to have been proven truly effective. It looks like he won't be calling it so little anymore. Michelle Bolsonaro, Brazil's first lady, tested positive for the coronavirus, the government announced on July 30th. 5 days after her husband, Jair Bolsonaro, said he had recovered from his COVID-19 infection. Canada First Lady Sophie Gregoire Trudeau. The wife of Justin Trudeau was confirmed to have caught the virus in mid-March upon her return from a speaking engagement in London. This prompted the Canadian leader to quarantine with her and run the country from his home. Sophie Trudeau and her family self-isolated for weeks at Rideau Cottage, the Prime Minister's official residence in Ottawa. Though her symptoms were described as mild, they were true, though. Get it? True, though? Trudeau? Never mind. The PM, on the other hand, was never confirmed to have contracted the virus. UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson. Perhaps the most famous case of COVID-19, UK British Prime Minister Boris Johnson tested positive for the virus at roughly the same time as Health Secretary Matt Hancock, and weeks after Minister Nadine Dorries. Because of this, he was forced to hand over his official duties to First Secretary of State and Secretary of State for Foreign and Commonwealth Affairs Dominic Raab as he was treated in intensive care. Speaking after his hospitalization, Mr. Johnson said the severity of his condition meant plans had been drawn up in the event of his death. He was back at work on April 27th after spending the worst of Britain's epidemic sidelined, first in self-isolation, then struggling to breathe in the hospital with 3 nights in intensive care and later in recovery in the countryside. Prince Albert II of Monaco. Another member of royalty, Monaco's Prince Albert II, tested positive for the novel coronavirus, the principality said in a statement, adding there were no concerns for his health and that the titular head of the Mediterranean enclave continued to work from his private apartment at the royal palace. It was confirmed the province's head of state had contracted the virus in mid-March, but medical practitioners said he was fully cured by April 1st. Burundi's president-elect Pierre Nkurunziza. Questions have continued to circle around the death of Burundi's president-elect, who died on an unspecified date in early June. While the government officially confirmed his passing to be the result of a heart attack, multiple reports from diplomats and medical sources have claimed he was infected with the virus, which had been passed on to several others in his circle. If confirmed, this would be the first death of a world leader attributed to COVID-19. Truly, the coronavirus knows no borders, with Antarctica as the only continent spared from its danger. What's the situation like in your country? Tell us in the comments down below, especially if you're from Antarctica. Let's compare notes with one another. Not even star power can save you from this virus. Watch our other video, Actors with COVID-19, including recoveries and deaths, where we reveal the names of the actors across theater, TV, and the big screen who've tested positive for the coronavirus so far, including some of the biggest names in Hollywood. Thank you for watching. This is Trending's Finest, always the trendiest, always the finest.